Hey, Happy New Year's.
New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve.
Woo!
2013 is going to be the best year ever.
It is.
Oh my God, I love that meme. Okay, so today we're talking about Indie Sleaze. What y'all know about Indie Sleaze? It's so funny because my family was asking about this because I was like, oh, I have to record a podcast tomorrow, can't hang out. And they're like, I was like, oh, I have to do research for the topic. And they're like, what topic? And I was like, Indie Sleaze. And the folks are like, question mark? And my brother, who is a part of the generation in question that would have experienced Indie Sleaze in its truest and purest form, didn't really understand it. But once I was like, oh, like MGMT, yeah, so like party culture. I was like, yeah, exactly. I was explaining it in terms of vibes, so they still weren't really understanding it. And because when we talk about indie sleaze or like anything else, really, like if we said 2016 makeup guru era, they would like short circuit probably. Like they probably would not understand what we were saying. But the vibes are important when you have to describe this era, I think.
Well, I feel like that also connects to the article from Vice that says that an indie sleaze revival is not real. Because I think you saying that your brother is just like, you mean party culture? Like that's just what it was to them. And I think
Hmm.
that's kind of what the article was getting at. So if we can start by talking about that if you guys want.
Yeah, very interesting article. And actually, I have to agree with it. At first, I think because when people started talking about indie sleaze again, or I guess was indie sleaze like the term indie sleaze like a new term?
Yeah, so we
Okay.
can we can get into that a little bit too. And Paulina, you're definitely like the oldest knower of this out of the three of us. The Vice article written by Ariel Richards says that indie sleaze is the style from the mid 2000s to very early 2010s, a period spanning about 2006 to 2012, defined by provocative advertisements, amateur style flash photography, opulent displays of clubbing, and a rise in outdated technology. And the indie sleaze term came from the Instagram account by the same name that was started in 2021. So it was named after the fact.
I remember people starting to talk about it last year, 2022, or at least like referencing indie sleaze and style specifically. Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, maybe there is a revival of it. Like maybe that is just something that another trend that people are like really leaning into. But after reading the article, I was like, actually, no, I agree. Because I think it's mainly, I mean, this is kind of outlined in the article also, but I do think it is mainly just a descriptor for how young adults act during a certain point of time, like as they're becoming young adults, maybe going to college or leaving college and like experiencing independence and embracing a little bit of hedonism since they're away from their parents, I guess. Also, as this is cited in the article, experiencing like a recession and financial struggle. And also I would like to throw in like a polarized political climate and like poor international relations. So, that's just I think it's just a young adult thing. Because also my other evidence for this is Urban Outfitters. Urban Outfitters, I feel like has not changed really at all. Like in the time span of like the last 5 to 10 years, like in terms of their image and their brand image and also just the types of products they sell, like their demographic has not changed. The, you know, fit, wear, and materials of their clothing has not changed. The price has definitely not changed. The young adult sort of way of living is pretty cookie cutter in a way. I think that's what Indie Sleaze is trying to represent.
The other thing that the article kind of pushed was that it's more of an umbrella term for different subcultures. So calling something indie sleaze is kind of just referring to all the different subcultures that were at play at that specific time. When I think about 2009 to 2011 even. I'm thinking about the like bright neon colors that were showing up, the graphic t-shirts, the plastic glasses with like the lenses popped out, like that sort of image, which still falls under indie sleaze, but I think that's more of like the hipster aspect of it. And then twee is like the other side of it, which is like the Alexa Chung, dark, edgy eyeliner kind of scene. But they all kind of blend together. And I think that was the other thing that the article was stressing, was that we're kind of just using indie sleaze as a monolith to describe that whole period of time. But I also think that that's kind of not really the best critique to give to invalidate indie sleaze as being a prominent era of a certain decade, I guess, or aesthetic of a certain decade. Because I think we kind of create monoliths for every decade. Like the 80s, when you think about it in like pop culture, it's always like the big hair and neon colors, very like mall core 80s. But that's not what the entire decade was comprised of.
I also wanted to say that because of COVID, Gen Z opted for like a pseudo club experience. Indie sleaze, like the club and going out to bars and things like that, is a huge part of the scene. And I think the rise in LED lights and like decorating your room and such vibrancy compared to, you know, generations past, that was like our primal instinct to go to the club. So we we put LED lights in our room to make them look club-like in a way. And no, I think that's fair. I agree with you in the sense that like we do kind of, obviously, like we never lived in past generations that are popular, you know, to like analyze, I guess. So yeah, I think we do kind of create a monolith for every generation. That's fair. I think also it's like the indie sleaze era is like too soon, like to really grasp yet. I think, like, honestly, I feel like we need like another 10 years, because if we want to distinguish it as like a true era, like the 2010s or like the mid to late 2000s, like if you want to distinguish that as a specific era of like fashion, society, culture, like I think we have to wait a little bit more for it to truly sink in, because I think obviously this article is like pretty resistant to considering it like an era. And like I said too, like I think it's more just like how young adults are acting in a like specific scenario that's created by world relations and like what's happening at the time. I just think we have to wait a little bit for it to truly like stand the test of time and see if it like truly like can people pinpoint that that was a specific era.
I think it's also confusing too because, as I've been saying, clearly I like to separate different eras by decade. The fact that this doesn't fall into a clean decade from like 2000 to 2010, it's more 2006 to 2012. So it's not even a decade, really. It's like a 6-year span, if that. But the other thing that I wanted to ask you guys about was the other thing that this article touches on that we talked about a little bit in the Dad Core episode as far as like micro trends go and social media, was how it used to be media that was influencing fashion, and now it's kind of just these people that log onto TikTok and say whatever they want are the ones pioneering this whole thing. Because, like the article says, all these other articles coming out saying that Indie Sleaze is coming back are referencing this one TikTok from this one TikToker that's a trend forecaster named Mandy Lee.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a little bit of research into her, and she actually is a trend forecaster. She was a writer working for like a lifestyle magazine, but wanted to work in fashion. So she transitioned into doing trend setting research for, you know, beer companies and beauty brands and stuff like that. And then the pandemic hit. So then she turned to TikTok and just started doing whatever during lockdown on TikTok and grew a following from that. So I do want to say that there's credibility to her, I think.
Yeah.
So these articles that are referencing her one TikTok, which actually the TikTok that she made is based off of another article. So it's like not just her. She's coming for with her own source for this. And I feel like the Vice article that we're talking about is trying to invalidate Indie Sleaze coming back by saying that all these articles are just citing this one TikToker. Even though, again, I do think she has some credibility. I do think it is interesting that one person can log on to TikTok with a prediction and suddenly all these news outlets are preaching this as fact.
Yeah, I mean, her claims are substantiated with evidence, I believe. Like, I think everyone kind of has an inkling that, like, there is some kind of, like, nostalgic behavior going on, especially during that time of, like, 2005 to 2010. And also, like, I think people are, especially us, like, are returning to like record players and vinyl, or at least collecting vinyl. I don't know if many people are buying record players, but also wired headphones. That was something that people had mentioned that was like an old piece of technology, which is true, I guess. And flip phones additionally, but like they're buying things that look like flip phones that are like iPhone cases that look like flip phones
And film cameras.
and digital cameras, like those small, like early digital cameras that you can buy for like $100 off eBay. I've seen a lot of people like decorate them with like stickers and like keychains to make them cuter. And also, I think that also lends itself to like the flash photography obsession, where it's bad flash photography, but it's fun because it's like an old camera. And also like pseudo film cameras, like lapse.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like, it just adds like a film grain and like flair to the photos you take, and you have to develop them, like, or you take the photo and it develops them for you, and then you can post them on your feed after they develop, which takes like 10 minutes. And then also Cam, which isn't like a new thing, but like it's just something that's like a pseudo film camera where it's like you can take it with your iPhone and it makes it look like a film photo. But yeah, like I think that's just something that I've seen grown in popularity, especially if you are someone who's like obsessed with music. Like I think if you like music and you are a part of a community online that likes a certain artist, like I think you will see at least a portion of that community be obsessed with like getting specific prints of vinyls and things like that. So definitely is coming back in a way. Thrifting, additionally, which is something that was referenced in Alexa Chung's article. I think during the Indie Sleaze era, the aspect of labels and brands was not, Alexa says that this isn't like, that wasn't a very big part of the fashion choices. Like you wore it because you liked it. Now I think people, when they go thrifting, though, they really look for the labels, the designers. And I think that's, lends itself to the reason why thrifting is like become gentrified in a way, because people are looking for specific things from the thrift store rather than just like, oh, you liked that shirt, I'm gonna get it.
And the Depop resellers buying up everything just to resell. That completely defeats the point of that.
Yeah. I don't know if that will ever go away, like people caring about the labels or where the shirt they're wearing came from. And also mixing patterns and textures. That was an Indie Sleaze era. Lace and leather, that's something that people are bringing back.
Fur coats as well. I think fur coats were a big part of that. And I've been seeing a lot of people talking about thrifting vintage fur coats or getting to wear inherited fur coats from family members that they had. Literally in Alexa Chung's book, she cites a photo from Royal Tenenbaums of Gwyneth Paltrow's character, Margot Tenenbaum.
Wait, show the cover. Show the cover. What book are we referencing?
It by Alexa Chung, Indie Sleaze Bible.
Literally, literally.
I think this is a good descriptor here. So she says Margot Tenenbaum's coal-eyed, chain-smoking appearance in the Royal Tenenbaums. I love her side-parted bob and preppy Lacoste dresses, the fur coat over a tennis dress. In America, I see 1,000 Margot tributes on Halloween, but that's because she's so damn cool and the look is timeless.
That's so true. In terms of mixing, the mixture of preppiness with trashiness, it's usually like the fit is preppy, but the makeup and the hair is trashy, messy. It looks like you just rolled out of bed. That's the look, I think. Or at least a really popular one.
I swear it was you, Tierney, that liked or retweeted a meme that I saw. I can't remember when it was. It was definitely like earlier this year or late last year. That was like bring back the 2009 trashy glitter party girl. And it was just 2009 photos of girls with like messed up makeup and glitter everywhere. And I think that that encapsulates this era pretty well. I
Oh
couldn't
yeah.
find it, so I remade a similar thing that captured that meme's essence.
Did you look on my account?
Yeah, I tried looking for it, but I couldn't find it.
Let's say you're going into a dark hole.
It's literally Squishmallows Tyranny. It's not dark. It's not dark at all.
I know, like all my likes. Let me just show real fast. It's just me, the jelly cat bot. I can't even see. It's just jelly cats. Yeah. I think I actually know what you're talking about because that sticks out in my mind because I do miss that. The trashy party girl.
I was trying to think of who the indie sleaze queens or the trashy party girls at present are as far as pop culture goes. And I put down Charlie XCX because I think given that she was around, I would say she was around more for like the Tumblr era than Indie Sleaze specifically, which actually, Paulina, I want to ask you about that because to me, I think the Tumblr era and Indie Sleaze are kind of getting conflated because I don't want to consider Tumblr as part of Indie Sleaze even though it existed. I don't know. That's a whole thing and we could talk about that after, but I feel like Charlie XCX, she's recently been leaning back into that early era of hers where she's going out with like the natural hair, not in her like messy era, actually a little bit. I think she was kind of wilding on social media, just posting whatever she wanted.
Yeah.
And then also I did see I linked a tweet that was Addison Rae's
Yeah.
Thanksgiving whatever music video star she posted to Shake It.
Love that video. I saw that tweet too, and I think that totally solidifies her as an indie sleaze queen.
She has the trashy party girl vibe.
Yeah. And I think the media hates her enough.
People have to be kind of bothered with that it like something about you has to make you not quite perfect enough.
Yeah. And I think the general public don't really like party girls, but we do.
Absolutely. Absolutely we do.
Party girl solidarity.
Can we talk about the Tumblr versus indie sleaze thing? Because I think they're different, but I don't really know how to describe them as different.
I think people are conflating the indie sleaze era with like the 2014 Tumblr era because they are similar in theory, but they're obviously not the same thing. I think for one, what was interesting about indie sleaze was that there wasn't a heavy reliance on social media outside of like the Cobra Stakes website and like random blogs. Like it wasn't like you were following different social media accounts, whereas Tumblr was arguably like one of the first waves of like pseudo influencers. And I think people are confusing the aesthetics as well, which is fair because again, it sort of crossed over from Indie Sleaze into the Tumblr era. But yeah, I think they're two very different things. They're founded on very different things as well. I think Tumblr is what, for as much as I love the indie Tumblr era, that was sort of the start of what we've complained about in the past about like calling things aesthetics just based on nothing and making things into like a core. Everything is a core all of a sudden. But they're two very different things, I think.
Also, I think indie sleaze is more MySpace, early Facebook
Yeah.
era.
But
Yeah.
people still keep referencing Tumblr in regards to that time, which I just feel like is not like it existed at that time, obviously, but I think Tumblr wasn't a big part of Indie Sleaze. Tumblr
Yeah.
was a big part of the Tumblr 2014 Tumblr era. I feel like Indie Sleaze is the mother of the 2014 Tumblr era.
Yeah.
They're mother and
Yeah.
daughter.
So true.
Again, I feel silly to keep referencing this book, but because we simply just were not a part of the MySpace era.
I remember people having it though in elementary school. I remember people talking about having their MySpace.
That's crazy.
Like
That's
I remember
crazy.
the thing is I have older brothers, so like they
Oh,
had
okay, okay.
MySpace.
I
Yeah,
thought you
yeah.
meant like your
No,
peers
no,
in
no, no.
elementary school. I
I
was like,
mean maybe,
what?
but I don't think they grasp what that really was.
Yeah.
Like I think
Yeah,
this
no, I had family members that were also like had
yeah.
MySpace.
I remember people talking about it. So I kind of understand what it was. And I remember seeing it. I remember seeing it online.
So to quote Alexa Chung once more from her book It, she talks about MySpace here and kind of this book came out in 2013, so she's kind of also referencing the 2013 present day social media. So she said, MySpace, originally built to celebrate unsigned bands, soon transformed into a breeding ground for the dull. It was there I honed my talent for stalking people. It became a haven for me to express myself via emoticons and songs. My holding page blasted out Psycho Killer by Talking Heads. It was a place I could be boring and technicolor. Social networking is an ironic name for something that has little to do with connecting us with others and everything to do with self-promotion. It's a one-way street or a one-way tweet, if you will. I'm with so-and-so, I just did this. Weird question. Whoever decided tweets should be 140 characters long is a genius. Who knew you could tell a complete story in just 3 sentences? Now full conversation and convoluted stories seem redundant. Thanks to Twitter, Facebook, and MySpace, soon I shall resort to grunting, pointing, and liking as a means of communication. That brings me to another point that I wanted to make, which was that there's this sense of surveillance now that we've also talked about, where I guess we've brought it up in the past as far as concert etiquette goes, and how we have a theory that perhaps people in the United States are too afraid to actually dance or sing along at concerts for fear of how they're going to be perceived by others, or if they're going to be recorded and then uploaded on social media and then people are making fun of them and they become a meme, that kind of thing. I think the indie sleaze era, having social media be less instantaneous, where people weren't walking around with smartphones that had cameras in them where they could instantly upload stuff to social media. It was, you bring a digital camera if you have one, you take the photos, you upload them to your computer, maybe the next day, maybe a week from then, you post them on social media. There's more of a process, there's more work to be done with it. And I think that's part of the party culture then being more freeing, is because you weren't being surveilled. You weren't really thinking about being perceived by people or ending up on social media on someone else's account at that time.
Yeah, because of that, like we can't truly embrace like hedonism like we did in Indie Sleaze. I mean, also because of COVID, like I think just people are more cautious about like
Others.
others and just like even being in social settings, like um
Well,
in
actually,
general.
there was another thing that I was thinking of too, and this could be a total stretch of a theory, but I do think that there's a pretty distinct cutoff with Indie Sleaze. I think it died in 2012 for sure. And I was thinking, I wonder if it's because of the YA dystopian era, because that hits at like 2012, 2013. And I think that kind of the hedonism of the indie sleaze era was very much like, okay, we're gonna party and we're gonna live while we're young and we're gonna do whatever we want. And then this YA dystopian era hits, where there's a ton of media being pushed on us that's about kind of sparking a revolution of like, okay, well, everything kind of sucks. Why don't we do something about it? So then it kind of goes from being, I guess, a little nihilistic and just like, okay, this is how things are. I might as well do what I can in this time, to wait, actually, maybe we can do something about this and make our lives better. Which I
Hmm.
guess you could still argue is a little hedonistic because you're still looking out for your own self-interest, but it's more of a collective thing with
Yeah.
like a wide group of people.
I was gonna say, like, I think after the indie sleaze cut off and into the dystopian era is when our generation, or Gen Z specifically, maybe younger millennials, started to be like more nihilistic.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, um, even today too, I think it's just like people do live their life still. Like, I think people still go out to the bars, people still club, but like, there's definitely like a sense of nihilism that's like very pervasive in media and culture and society right now.
I also think overall people are more politically radicalized now
Yeah.
more than ever. So even
Mm-hmm.
though that same clubbing, partying activity is happening, maybe in a different form, it's different because I think people are still also actively trying to change bad things that are happening in the world.
Yeah, I agree. Alexa Chung states in that article from the Financial Times, Alexa Chung on the Polished Appeal of Indie Sleaze. She quotes Indie Sleaze as being apolitical, or like especially like being embraced by the scene, or like just the things that they were doing was seen as apolitical. And now I think like nothing can be apolitical at this moment. There's just no separating that. I think just because everyone has become so radicalized and wants to really embrace change for the better. So I think that's interesting how that is different from then, at least if we're looking at Indie Sleaze versus now. Should we talk about the music?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
I listen to MGMT, Vampire Weekend, and Passion Pit. Like I am a stan, and I have been a stan for a long time. So I think I definitely like absorbed a lot of my music taste from my older brothers who were in college during the Indie Sleaze era in high school. So like I would just like get absorb all of that, like because I'd hear it all the time. It's funny because I feel like we don't have like any modern references to that type of music. Or do you guys disagree? Like I feel like MGMT, Passion Pit, like that sort of like indie pop music is so like unique. And I feel like we haven't replicated that sound. And I think that's also why people think there's sort of a revival because people are looking at MGMT and Passion Pit and like just like reminiscing on how good the music is.
I think the other part of it too, specifically with like MGMT, like they were just so unserious, like as a group. Like I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
they're the band that started as a joke. Like I'm pretty sure they literally formed to be like anybody can do this, it's so easy. And then they did it. And then
slay.
it blew up and they're like, "Oh, I guess we're doing this now for real." And so they were always just very unserious about being famous. Which I think Time to Pretend is like, yeah, like they were very self-aware about what they were doing. Because I always think about the line where they're like, we'll find some models for wives, and then they're like, then we'll get a divorce and we'll do it all again. Which is like, yeah, like you kind of just ate up every rock star that ever lived. And I think the person that comes to mind when thinking about that kind of music is Hemlock Springs.
Oh, so true.
She's the person that comes to mind as far as like indie pop goes. I think she has a new sound,
Yeah,
but I think it's still taking some of the elements of this era of indie pop.
that's so true.
I think she's replicating the sound pretty well and
Hmm.
putting her own twist on it. But I think I don't know if anyone's ever going to be able to do that and also have that unserious MGMT kind of energy about it, where it's like not, they're kind of doing it as like a bit, you
Yeah.
know?
Hmm.
I think that was the last era where, and not to sound corny in saying this, but I think it was the last era where indie music was actually indie before record labels would sort of try to capitalize on it, which has happened throughout all of music history, obviously. But I think that was definitely the last era in part because like streaming wasn't huge yet, going viral wasn't a big thing yet. So I think in terms of the sound not being able to be replicated, like you people I'm sure have tried to replicate it, but it just doesn't feel the same. Like it doesn't feel genuine anymore. Because I think whenever, at least in my perception of it, whenever I see bands or artists trying like marketing themselves as, oh, we're so indie sleaze, or like for any genre, like, oh, we're such a grunge band, things like that, it's like you sound like a cover band, like you don't sound real. And so I think that's part of the problem is people are trying too hard to replicate something that they just weren't around for, and that's okay. But there's more of a focus on trying to replicate something than there is on trying to be original. I'm not a musician, but that's how I see it.
It went from being a scene to now it's just a genre.
That's so true. And also, I think like the indie music now that a lot of people consider like indie, like very popular indie right now, is very like more acoustic sounding, also very nihilistic.
Bring back electropop.
Literally. Yeah, like it's the sound that for popular indie right now is just so different to what was popular then. Sky Ferreira.
And she's back. She's out of hiding.
See, that's what we need. Like, Indie Sleaze is not going to come back by recreating it. We need the actual people that were in it to be on the move again.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be recreated. Like, I think there needs to be just a natural sort of like
resurgence.
Yeah, of it. And also like you said, like Hemlock Springs like definitely brings a new sound to indie, which
And
I
it's
love Hemlock Springs.
good. It's
Yeah.
really like her music is really good.
Mm-hmm.
And she literally is like one of the only literal bedroom pop girlies that I've seen in like the past couple years. Like she's literally just doing this, producing her music on her own in her bedroom.
Mm-hmm. I follow her on TikTok and she would post videos of like her going to her sets. I want to go see her in concert so bad. She looks so fun. Besides electropop, there's other bands.
We made a giant playlist of it.
Yeah.
A giant one. We got a little carried away. She has a massive playlist, but it's so good. I've been listening to it.
No, me too. Some of our best work, I must say.
Yeah, definitely.
That's such a good era for music. Oh my
No,
god,
it really is.
bro.
It really is.
I was in my music wise, my indie sleaze era, like in high school. Like I was obsessed with that whole era of music.
Me
So
as
it's
well.
funny.
I was too. I
Yeah.
was listening to the indie pop playlist all the
It's
time.
very high school coded. But yeah, it's just funny how it's circling back all over again. And I already feel old listening to it.
That's the other thing too. I know that this is very subjective depending on where you live and the radio stations that play, but I was always listening to like the basic, like this is the pop radio station to listen to in this area. And it was always just like hit after hit. And I feel like these indie sleaze classics were also being pushed on the radio. And that just doesn't happen anymore.
It's so funny to me.
I was talking to my grandfather like over the summer and he was like, there aren't any bands anymore. Like no one's forming bands. And I'm like, girl, there are. They just aren't playing them on the radio. And you only listen to the radio. And to him, like he was listening to like the 60s and 70s like rock bands. So like if you only listen to the radio and live through those eras, yeah, it would seem like no one's in bands anymore because they're not getting pushed on the radio. It's these solo artists that are getting pushed,
Yeah, I mean, also
which
like
is just sad
people
to
just
me.
don't really listen to the radio.
That's fair. Streaming did change it.
I think NPR should move into the ASMR space.
Yeah.
Radio ASMR.
People just fall asleep at the wheel.
Would be crazy, Brett. That would be crazy.
I would regret not talking about American Apparel
Oh my god, you're so right.
and all the like indie sleaze discourse that has come back over the last couple of years. I feel like American Apparel is not getting her flowers like she deserves, which is wild to me. Because I know it impacted me at too young of an age. And I think I could say the same for many others. But I feel like what we were talking about, or what you guys were talking about earlier about hedonism trying to come back, I think it also sort of couples with like sexuality not really being a thing anymore, at least not mainstream. And I think American Apparel is what capitalized on that, definitely, to say the least. But I think it was the last era where like they really pushed the envelope in that sense and tried to see what they could get away with. And I think people are trying to replicate that now, but are failing because we just don't have that little edge in regards to like hedonistic tendencies and sexuality and mainstream culture and media and what have you. I think I had told you guys I did a ton of research on this like a year and a half ago
I
for like different
remember. I remember you
projects.
talking about it,
Yeah,
yeah.
with like the founder. He is a very controversial person,
Yeah.
to say the least. Like you can Google it for yourself.
The Infant Alumni has a whole episode on this.
A wonderful episode on it.
A
Yeah.
two-parter, I think,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, it's so good. So listen to their episode if you want to know more about that man and research it for yourself. But he then went on to found Los Angeles Apparel,
Which there
which
are
is
billboards of everywhere in LA.
yeah. I remember being so excited to see them because I was like, oh my God, they're real. And it's interesting. I don't hate it. I think it's very apparent that he's trying to bring back what once was, which has its good and bad qualities, of course. But I don't really know what to pinpoint it on in regards to like that sort of advertising just can't work today. I think there's a number of reasons as to why, but I also think it's important to consider it when talking about indie sleaze and the appeal of it visually. I think that like messiness and that sort of like chaotic aesthetic that we associate with it now owes a lot of credit to that advertising.
I've noticed a few brands start to like embrace pushing the envelope in terms of graphic elements. Like, is it called Praying?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one where it's like has like the swimsuit that says, or it has like a shirt that says God's favorite.
Yeah. Addison Rae was
Yeah,
wearing it.
the bathing suit.
The Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Yeah, and I think also in past episode like Killian Murphy's skirt.
Almighty. Yeah.
Yes, Almighty. The shock factor in terms of like phrases on a shirt that you would probably not like to have on a shirt.
That's literally the iCarly formula.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
iCarly deserves its flowers now that I think about it.
You know, that was kind of indie sleaze, I would have to
They
say.
were.
I also saw a TikTok that I added to our indie sleaze TikTok collection. That was the Fred movie. They were like, why was Fred an indie sleaze sleeper? And it was just like
That's so
shots of the
funny.
party scene. And I was like, that's actually really accurate. It really was like trashy party girl.
Have you guys? I haven't watched it yet, admittedly, but there's this documentary called Meet Me in the Bathroom. It's about like the early 2000s indie rock revival. It's named after a Stroke song. So it's like them, Interpol, Yeah Yeah Yeahs, that whole New York rock era. I've seen a lot of people talking about it in reference to Indie Sleaze, how like if you want a good visual for it as well as the sound of it, watch that documentary.
Oh, should we talk about Saltburn now in
Oh
terms of
my
media?
gosh.
Ah!
Visually as a signifier of interest of that time. Because when you think about
Yeah.
it, that movie did not need to take place in the 2000s. It could have been a present day movie. But there's obviously it was chosen to be during that time frame for a reason. So I think that definitely shows interest in that era.
Yeah, I think also the vibrancy of it. Obviously, going into it, I was like, I knew this is gonna be some kind of like indie sleaze mishmash of like in terms of aesthetics and like things like that. But I was just like, wow, put this in the Louvre. Like, it's so gorgeous. I love it so much.
Shimmer glitter eyeshadow is important. I also like Tierney, I know you said you only watched half of the movie, but the party scene at the end is like my dream party. Just the aesthetic of it is just like so beautiful. For visual reference, it's giving What Does the Fox Say music video. Very like animalistic,
Yeah.
which is literally like that is my dream.
That's crazy.
That's like my dream. I've been obsessed with that. Like the visuals. Oh, go. I encourage you to watch that music video again.
I'll revisit it. I think animal heads, like, do you get I had an animal horse head, like the latex ones. But I feel like that is very indie sleaze. Like the mixture of like, oh my god, BoJack Horseman, like kind of is giving indie sleaze.
2010, this album came out. I'm thinking of The Head and the Heart by The Head and the Heart. The album cover. I can send a picture to you guys. Just this like creepy. It's like a guy with like a lamb mask on and a cigarette in his mouth, and he's got white shirt, black tie, leather jacket, and he's standing next to a girl with a blonde bob and a brown coat. It's kind of dead on.
Oh my god,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's sick.
I don't know why that made me just like think of the Vampire Weekend Contra.
Oh, the girl.
Yeah.
I love that.
I love the drama behind that cover.
Yeah, wait, can you I remember seeing that.
I don't remember exact details, but essentially they used that Polaroid. I forget, they found it somewhere, I believe, or like the photographer they were working with had it, something like that. All this to say, like the woman in the photo did not know the band and vice versa. They used the photo anyways without like getting permission from her. And she didn't know about it until I believe it was her daughter who showed her the photo and were like, what the hell? Like, since when were you on this cover? She's like, I had no idea about that. So they used the photo like without her consent, and she didn't know about it until it was already released into the world. And so there was, I believe there was a legal battle with it and everything. I'm not sure what came of it, but it's just funny to me because it became so iconic and she literally had no idea. It's a great photo.
No, it is
is.
a really good photo.
She
Yeah.
looks
I
beautiful.
love that album so much. That's one that I listen
Yeah.
to repeatedly.
I love Vampire Weekend. They're fun. A-Punk.
Classic. Campus even. That is
Oh,
getting, that's
Campus is
our,
so good.
right?
Any life stands? Life stands.
Apparently the first album cover of The Chandelier is from like the inside of some like very exclusive club slash society at Columbia.
Wait, that's so cool. Yeah, there's a weird sense of preppiness about it. Just because I think it's a young adult thing, it's like college is that sort of thing.
Oh my God. I have to talk about Skins.
Oh,
Oh
so
yeah.
Skins
true.
UK. You guys haven't seen it, right?
I think
No.
I've seen a few episodes.
Okay, okay. I won't go too crazy, but again, there is no talking about Indie Sleaze without mentioning Skins UK. I think especially like the revival of Effie Stoneham as an icon is so amazing to me because I loved her when I was watching Skins when I was way too young. But I feel like that is such an accurate representation of the Indie Sleaze era as it was happening.
Queen of Smudged Eyeliner.
Oh, so good. Yeah, the outfit's incredible. All the party scenes from that show, also incredible. And I'm glad it's making a comeback. I am. Although, again, with everything making a comeback, I think people are trying to replicate it and it's not gonna work. Because Skins was just it was its own time.
I think they had like the teenage actors writing episodes too. Like I know Daniel
Really.
Kaluuya was like writing episodes.
That's the first thing I ever saw him in. And every time I think of him in Skins.
Possibly Dev Patel as well, but I know definitely Daniel Kaluuya was writing episodes
That's right, Dev Patel was in it as well.
at like
Crazy.
17 years old.
Yeah, they look like literal babies. Yeah, that show's amazing. I recommend, honestly. It's such a good time capsule of that era. So good, so fun. The soundtrack goes crazy too.
There's such a UK aspect or like European aspect to Indie Sleaze, and like it's showcased in Saltburn pretty well, I think. Because I think like their sort of college life in an American's eyes is true preppiness, you know what I mean? Like their style of wear and things like that. And also the architecture of like I guess in Saltburn it's Oxford, but like that sort of architecture to me is very Indie Sleaze. And like plastering glitter on that image.
I did read another article that was talking about the founder of the Indie Sleaze Instagram account. Her name's Olivia. She's from Canada. And the article was just kind of saying that she, by coining the term Indie Sleaze and posting all these pictures, kind of merged the UK scene with the scene that was happening in America, which to me, I think, or sorry, North America, because she's from Canada. To me, I feel like the North American scene is like distinctly New York City. I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's just because of like I'm associating it in my own brain with like New Year's Eve, but just like the glitter kind of underground club scene. Maybe it's because of like bands like The Strokes that were emerging from New York at the time, but I definitely associate it with New York. Should we talk about The Strokes and the Killers beef?
Yeah. I don't know about the beef, so I want to hear from you guys about it.
Pretty much, The Strokes put their first album out first, and when Brandon Flowers, frontman of The Killers, heard the album, he literally said in an article, he like talked about this like years later. He said listening to their album, Is This It, made him depressed because he was like, oh, our stuff isn't as good as this. So then they scrapped the entire album that they had, aside from Mr. Brightside, and started completely over and put out Hot Fuss, which is probably why that album is absolutely no skips. Like it's kind of just hit after hit with that album because he was only putting the baddest heifers on the block out there. So
So real.
and then I think guitarist in the Strokes.
Albert Hammond Jr.
Is there another guitarist? Because I think I
Yeah, there's Nick Valenci.
Okay. He said in an article that the Strokes were mad that the Killers were getting more radio play than them because they're like, we know our music is better, so why is everyone listening to them instead? They were just bitter about it. But I think that's funny. It's like comparing apples and oranges because their music isn't really similar. That era of like indie rock was very much, I guess, the creation of garage rock and then this kind of turn back to like new wave music. And they both represent that. Whereas like the Strokes is more garage rock and the Killers were very heavily inspired by new wave. So it's like, why are we even comparing them in the first place?
Love them both though.
Yeah. Do you guys think that Indie Sleaze is having a revival?
I don't think in its purest form. I think it's like kind of a disjointed revival in a way. Like there's certain things that are coming back, but I think that's just like I don't think it's like a true revival. The clothes are too baggy. The indie is not pop enough. No random parties that with like a bunch of celebrities in it having interactions. The fandom wars are getting in the way of this. It could be the inkling or like the seedling of a revival. Like maybe next year is when like something truly happens, but I think it's too disjointed at this time.
I think aesthetically it's having a little bit of a comeback, but in spirit, not so much.
Yeah.
People are just turning back to the music of that time and smudged eyeliner and twee looking clothes. It's mimicry. It's not really anything meaningful, I don't think.
Yeah. From a makeup perspective, it's too structured. Makeup is too like straight lines. Like
Yeah,
nothing's
Indie
smudged right
Sleaze
now.
is kind of no makeup, honestly. It's literally just
Yeah.
like your dirty eyeshadow and mascara
Makeup
and
you slept
eyeliner.
in and then like kind of cleaned up with a makeup wipe.
I've seen it a lot on like runways though, which is interesting. Like with Celine, we put it in the TikTok collection. But for the last couple years, they've done very like indie sleaze inspired collections. I think Alexa Chung mentions it in her article that we keep referencing too. They called it like the age of indiness. Whatever pops up in the collections for like the season to come is always very telling of what's really gonna hit mainstream. So I'm sure we'll be seeing Indie Sleaze inspired stuff in like H&M and Forever 21 and all that by the spring. I wouldn't be mad at it, but I agree with you guys that I think it's more focused on the aesthetic than it is on like the energy of it, which makes it feel superficial.
Also, I'm remembering I did some research of Mandy Lee and an article that I found. She's kind of like, listen, like my prediction is just a prediction. Like we'll see what happens. Like she wasn't really like, this is what I'm saying, so take my word for it. This is what's happening. And she talked about reading an interview with icon legend superstar Lynn Yeager, where she says that fashion is just a combination of new ideas on the same thing. And I think that's kind of what's happening. It's not really going to be a direct revival of Indie Sleaze. It's going to be, okay, we're going to take what we like from Indie Sleaze and make something new from it.
Oh, it has whipped cream on it.
They didn't know what it was, so they made some kind of weird thing.
Okay. Sorry.
I read off your textbook and they were like,
Okay. What?
What'd
I
you
asked
get?
for
What'd you get?
a latte with brown sugar cookie syrup, and I think they like circuited or something. And like all I asked was a latte with brown sugar syrup, and they're like, here's a latte with whipped cream, vanilla, brown sugar cookie syrup, oatmeal, oh not oatmeal, oat milk and whipped cream. This is what I wrote down to my brother to get. I said small brown sugar cookie iced latte with whole milk.
Taste it. I want to know. Taste test.
I'm scared. I don't like the Dunkin' oat milk.
This is the first Bev review on the pod.
So true.
Literally a milkshake. Okay, first sip. God. It's very sweet. It's fine. It's not bad. It doesn't taste bad. It's very sweet.
Rate out of 10.
Like a 6. A 6. Yeah.
It looks good.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. The Dunkins in the South are not the same as the ones in the Northeast, I have to say.
Signing off of 2023.
Oh, you guys did that at the same time. It was like, exactly. I hope everyone listens to Sleepyhead by Passion Pit the minute it strikes midnight as a way to ring in the new year. I hope everyone does that.
Wear lots of glitter, smudge that eyeliner, sleep in your makeup.
Sleep in your makeup.
That's the only way we're walking into 2024. Okay, bye.
Bye.